I'm Christina. Sitting in my apartment, surrounded by the silence that once held so many memories, I'm reminded of how quickly life can change. It all started with a simple text message that shattered my world into a million pieces. It was an ordinary Thursday afternoon, and I was drowning in a sea of unimportant emails, trying to convince myself that my coffee didn't taste like disappointment. That's when my phone lit up, and those words appeared on the screen, like a knife to my heart: I'm done with you. Good luck getting by. I've cleared out our account. I'm leaving you for someone with real drive. Lawyers are on the divorce. Don't try to find me. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I stared at the screen, hoping that the words would rearrange themselves into a cruel joke. But there was no follow-up, no got you or love you. Just that cold, heartless message. I opened our banking app with trembling fingers. The account we used for everything: rent, utilities, groceries, showed a balance of $0. Underneath it, in stark numbers, the previous balance was $80,000. My throat tightened. This wasn't a mistake, it was a calculated betrayal. But instead of panicking, a strange calm washed over me. I knew something my ex-husband, Derek, didn't. 4 years ago, when we first moved in together, Derek, who worked at a bank, insisted on handling our finances. He'd come home smelling of confidence and talking about interest rates like they were the most fascinating things in the world. Christina, he'd say, patting my head like I was a child, you don't understand money like I do. Let me optimize our finances. I was young and naive, and I confused his control with care. So, I agreed. He set up what he called our shared account and added me as an authorized user. He told me it was better for taxes, credit building, and all those grown-up things. Every month, I transferred my share, and he took care of the bills. It seemed to work fine from the outside. But 8 months ago, things started to change. Derek's favorite pastime became calling me financially incompetent. He'd say it at parties as a joke, use it as a weapon during arguments, and dismiss me like a child when I asked simple questions. Something inside me snapped. I started to dig deeper. I noticed strange terms on the statements, phrases that didn't sound like a regular checking account. I Googled them, and the results made my blood run cold. I called the bank, pretending to be confused. The representative told me that I was an authorized user, but it wasn't a checking account at all. It was a business line of credit in Derek's name. I wasn't a co-signer, and I wasn't liable for the repayment. That night, as I listened to Derek in the shower, I realized the terrifying truth. The man who called me incompetent had built our financial relationship on a foundation I didn't understand. But I knew if I confronted him, he'd shift the blame, hide things, and turn it into a fight I'd lose. So, I stayed quiet. I kept transferring my money every month and opened my own checking account in secret, like a woman preparing for a disaster. When that text came after the initial shock, I let out a bitter laugh. Derek hadn't emptied our money, he'd maxed out his own business credit line, thinking he was ruining me. I replied with 2 simple words: same to you. It didn't take long for the chaos to start. Within 73 minutes, my phone started vibrating like a possessed thing. Derek was calling, but I declined every call. Then the texts started pouring in, filled with panic and accusations. I took screenshots of everything, knowing that men like Derek rewrite history to make themselves the heroes. 20 minutes later, I got a call from Derek's older brother, Ryan. Ryan had always been the decent one in the family, uncomfortable when Derek made cruel jokes but not knowing how to stop him. He was breathless on the phone, asking what was going on. I calmly explained that Derek had drained what he thought was our joint account and was leaving me. Ryan was shocked. I told him it was a business credit line in Derek's name, and he'd actually stolen from himself. Ryan tried to argue that I'd put money in too, but I explained that my transfers were payments towards his credit line, and the debt was his. Then, he dropped a bombshell. Derek was with someone else, a woman named Lily he'd met at a networking event. He'd lied to her, telling her I was rich, that we had a huge joint savings, and that he'd get a large sum in the divorce. When the bank called Derek about the debt, Lily vanished. She'd rented an apartment, but she never added Derek's name to the lease. So, he was basically homeless. And to make matters worse, he started posting online, claiming I was financially abusive and that I'd tricked him into debt. But his lies didn't last long. A former colleague of his, Mark, commented on his post, saying that Derek had opened the account himself and bragged about it for years. Derek deleted the post, but the screenshots were already spreading. Desperate, Derek tried to flip the story into something criminal. I received an email from an unfamiliar address with the subject line "Urgent Fraud Investigation Notice." I knew what it meant. Derek was trying to make me the scapegoat for his debt. I forwarded the email to my lawyer, Ms. Thompson. She was a tough woman, with a voice like steel. She told me to let Derek talk, because men like him don't know when to stop explaining themselves. The bank called me later that day. They'd reviewed the account activity and found that all my transactions were for routine household expenses. They also informed me that Derek had personally withdrawn the full $80,000 in a single transaction. Filing a false fraud claim is a federal offense, they said. 2 weeks later, we were in court. Derek showed up in a designer suit, looking confident as ever. He talked about his lifestyle expectations and how I'd controlled the finances and withheld support. He demanded alimony. But the judge was smart. She asked him a series of questions, and Derek's lies started to fall apart. She denied his alimony request, and for the first time, I saw the reality hit him. But Derek didn't give up. He started harassing me at work, calling my HR department daily, claiming I'd stolen from him. My company pressed charges for harassment, and the bank accelerated his debt. He missed his first payment because he'd already spent most of the $80,000 on luxury items and Lily's NFT project. In a last-ditch effort, he launched a crowdfunding campaign, claiming to be a survivor of financial abuse. It raised only $37 in 3 days. Then, he was arrested for violating the cease and desist order. His father, Mr. Thompson, bailed him out but set strict conditions. But Derek couldn't follow the rules. He violated them again, and this time, his father let him sit in jail for 48 hours. The divorce hearing was a formality. The judge reviewed all the evidence, the withdrawals, the texts, the harassment charges. She ruled that Derek was malicious and awarded him only 40% of the marital assets, factoring in the $80,000 he'd withdrawn. I kept my apartment, my retirement savings, and my peace. Derek tried to declare bankruptcy, but the bankruptcy trustee noticed that he'd transferred some of his assets to his parents to hide them. An investigation was opened. Meanwhile, I ran into Lily at a cafe near my office. She was embarrassed and apologized, saying she didn't know Derek was married at first. She'd invested $15,000 in his NFT project, which was now worth only $300. After that, Derek's life continued to spiral. His credit score was in the gutter, he was fired from his retail job for screaming at a customer, and he ended up working at a call center in collections. He still tried to contact me through a mutual friend, saying he'd learned his lesson. I told the friend to tell him, good luck getting by. And that was that. I've moved on. I started hiking again, something Derek used to mock. That's where I met Jake. He's a kind, steady man who reads contracts before signing and doesn't confuse control with care. On our third date, he asked how I like to handle money, and I told him transparently. He nodded and said he felt the same way. Looking back, I realized that Derek's entitlement was his downfall. He thought he could get away with anything, but in the end, he only destroyed himself. And I'm grateful for the lessons I've learned and the new life I've built.